In this video, we're going to look at the core themes of socialism. We already have looked at liberalism, and liberalism, as we've seen, was a post-Enlightenment ideology, an abstract theory about human nature and human behavior, and very much centered on the idea of rationalism, that the world has a rational structure that can be explained through reason. And at the center of liberalism, again, is the notion of individualism, rational individuals, and individualism prioritizes the individual over any social or collective group. Then we had to look at conservatism, which was a pre-Enlightenment ideology, accepting the neoliberal strand. And conservatism broadly does not subscribe to abstract theories, does not subscribe to rationalism, believes in the idea of human imperfection and the organic society, and the need for tradition, hierarchy, order, and pragmatism. Now we're looking at socialism, which, again, like liberalism, is a post-Enlightenment ideology, an abstract theory about human nature and human behavior, which also sees itself as rational or buying into rationalism, but socialists take rationalism to a very different place. For socialists, rationalism leads to collectivism rather than liberal individualism. Collectivism is the belief that collective human endeavour is of greater practical value and moral value than individual self-striving. For socialists, it is simply not rational to have an atomistic, individualist, liberal type of society. It is much more rational to have a cooperative or collectivist society. So the 5 core themes of socialism are community, cooperation, equality, class politics, and common ownership. For community, socialists argue that human nature is naturally sociable, gregarious, and cooperative. We are social creatures who are best able to overcome problems by using the power of community rather than as isolated individuals. Similar in some ways to liberals, but unlike conservatives who believe that human nature is unchanging and fixed, socialists believe in the plasticity of human nature, that human nature can be improved and developed through social interaction, and a key criteria is through appropriate social institutions. If we are put into the right circumstances or environment, we can become better people. Therefore, socialists would argue for nurture over nature. Following on from community is the idea of cooperation. The right environment for people to flourish is one characterized by cooperation. Unlike liberals, socialists see competition, such as that embedded within the capitalist system, as destructive, as it pits individuals against each other, merely promoting selfishness and aggression. Cooperation, on the other hand, for socialists is simply more rational. It makes economic and moral sense, helping to develop bonds of sympathy, caring, and affection. Therefore, as we said before, the right environment for people to flourish is one characterized by cooperation. Cooperation is more rational. It makes economic and moral sense, developing these bonds of sympathy, caring, and affection. Combining community and cooperation, you could end up with your definition of collectivism, that collective endeavour is of better practical value, community and cooperation, than individual self-striving. Human nature has a social core. It's rational, according to socialists, for individuals, for people to work together collectively, makes much more sense economically and morally than individual self-striving. And as we looked at in class, the iconic symbol of left-wing politics is the closed fist, symbolizing this idea of community and cooperation, in that the fingers clasped tightly together are much more effective, much more stronger than in the individual fingers of the hand. The third core theme is that of equality, and socialists, similar in some ways to the criticisms of modern liberals, see equality of opportunity is a myth due to the structural inequalities of wealth and power in capitalist societies. Socialists instead, fundamentalist socialists, promote equality of outcome, where rewards, in society are distributed fairly and evenly between all members of the society. For socialists, equality of outcome upholds justice and fairness. It promotes social solidarity, social cohesion, and it helps achieve self-fulfillment. Marxists, are the term we would use for the course, fundamentalist socialists look to achieve absolute equality through the abolition of private property and the collectivization of productive wealth. Later, different strands, revisionist socialists or social democrats, move this towards what they described as relative equality, which can be achieved through the redistribution of wealth through a welfare state and progressive taxation. The fourth core theme is that of class politics. And socialists believe that social class is the most significant and deepest of class or society's divisions. For Marx, as we'll see when we look at classical Marxism, social class was the key to unlocking our understanding of historical development. The famous quote from the Communist Manifesto, "The history of all previous societies has been the history of class struggles." Through his theory of historical materialism, that history is driven forward through a struggle for material goods, Marx used the concept of social class as an analytical tool in describing or analysing the structures of society and how changes in society occur, arguing that social classes were the principal agents of historical change and class conflict itself was the motor of history. Within the capitalist society that Marx was particularly writing about, he identified two classes: the proletariat, who subsisted through the sale of their labour, and the bourgeoisie, the ruling class, the owners of productive wealth, who exploited the proletariat. And Marx considered that the conflict between these two classes was simply irreconcilable and would inevitably lead to a revolution which would overthrow capitalism and lead to a communist or classless society. Again, as we'll see with strands, this idea of class politics and class conflict becomes diluted as time goes on, and for example, the Social Democrats would look to aim to reduce class divisions, and then the neo-revisionists, the third way, socialists, if we can call them that, focus more on classless society, the absence of class conflict. The final core theme then is that of common ownership. And if we think about how conservatives view property or private property, that it's a source of security, something to fall back on, promotes good social values, is an extension of an individual's personality. For socialists, for Marxists, private property is almost a negative mirror image. For them, private property is unjust, it's morally corrupting, and it's divisive. And fundamentalist socialists or Marxists would seek to abolish private property along with the capitalist system in favour of a qualitatively different kind of society. This socialist emphasis on common ownership, or the struggles within socialism about the degree to which private property should be allowed, is referred to as the politics of ownership, and it did become a deeply divisive issue among socialists. Fundamentalist socialists or Marxists sought to abolish all private property along with the capitalist system. In Soviet Russia and in similar countries, state socialism saw the state controlling all aspects of economic life through central planning and the collectivization of private property. Unlike fundamentalist socialists or state socialists, later social democrats or revisionist socialists distanced themselves from the idea of abolishing all private property. Other countries, such as in the UK, saw some industries nationalised, taken into public ownership, but others left in private hands, and this was known as the mixed economy. Later, neo-revisionists moved even further away from the abolition of private property, beyond even a mixed economy, and expressed a preference, if anything, for private ownership. In summary then, the core themes of socialism are community, cooperation, equality, class politics, and common ownership.